Welcome, Jacob. So nice to have you join me on the podcast.
Welcome. I love to be here. This is great. I appreciate you inviting me.
Sure. Well, let's begin by you telling me a little bit about your culinary journey. I know it's been a longer one, maybe not so long, but just briefly, I know you worked in Chicago at one time, and I also lived in Chicago for a while. I don't think we coincided, but I just wanted to hear about your background a bit.
Great. My background, long story short, is I'm a Wisconsin boy. A long time ago, and I'm a self-taught chef, which surprises a lot of people to get to earning two Michelin stars eventually, and Food and Wine Best Chef, which is amazing accomplishments. But
For sure.
for me, just being a self-taught chef was a really good thing because when I moved to Chicago, I worked for Charlie Trotter. If you know who that is, which he's not around anymore, sad, unfortunately. But basically, that was my schooling. I was there for 2 years, and that really took me from where I thought I was a good cook. The reason why I was in the kitchen in the first place when I was a kid, it was not to be a chef. I just liked eating, and being in the kitchen and controlling the food like grandma and mom used to do where I'm from is the way to be. So I always wanted to be around food so I can
Mhm.
have chef snacks so I can eat. And that just that passion, that love led me to move to Chicago because it was a natural progression from where I lived, which was called Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, which is an hour in between Madison, Green Bay, and Milwaukee, and only about
Mhm.
3.5 hours from Chicago. Anyways, and that set me off on the right foot. And I worked at Alinea, which is a three Michelin star restaurant still around, and they're focused more on the molecular gastronomy and smoke and mirrors and really theatrics of the culinary uh, portion of it. And that led me to my path where it is now. And that's the short end of that. But
Cool.
everybody has their own way to get around to your goals, to get to your goals. And my goal is to just be the best chef I can be and make people happy. And I just love cooking, and I love sharing that with other people.
So, how did you end up in South Florida?
Great question. I have no family here. My wife has no family here. My wife Nadia, which I do Conro, our restaurant Conro here in West Palm Beach. We do that together. We do everything together, and we wouldn't have it any other way. She's from Colorado, and that led me to Colorado for during the pandemic. So I was in Chicago.
Hmm.
We met just before all the COVID thing happened, and I moved to Denver with her, and we were there for 2 years, and that led us to West Palm eventually because we both just decided, do we want to stay in Denver or do we want to look elsewhere and see um, what kind of has a nice work life balance. And Palm Beach, South Florida really checked off all those boxes for us, and we couldn't be happier to be here. So it was kind of a long shot, but we love it here, and it was the right decision for us, and we're happy to be a part of this community.
Well, the weather is certainly nicer than Chicago.
It can be, yeah, absolutely.
When you decided to open with a tasting menu format, that's kind of like, I mean, I've been to Alinea. That was my big splurge when I lived in Chicago. So I know that's kind of like a tasting menu format too. Did your experience sort of push you towards that direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's all I do. I've been doing tasting menu since I started my own cuisine, and
Hmm.
that is definitely a part of my experience, my training, if you will. And I also think, as far as how I like to cook, which is it's really artistic expression. I always say flavor is always first. I want everything to taste good, and but it's very artistic, and it's a way to basically tell a story. You don't write a book with just one long chapter, do you? You break it up in a progression of ebbs and flows and three different acts, if you will, and you have to have your crescendos, and so it's another element to express yourself instead of just having delicious plates and you can do one or two or three or let people order a la carte. They I have over 100,000 hours of experience. They just trusted me to create a tasting menu of beautiful things that they have no idea what to expect, but they just trust in the process, and they're excited to see what kind of story basically I can give them through food and through just there's more to it than that, just food or a restaurant. My wife, she's amazing, and she does all, she's a sommelier, so she does the
Hmm.
wine pairings, and it's the music, it's the ambiance, it's the whole thing, and we welcome them to what we consider a portion of our house, like an extension of our home. And yeah, so the tasting menu, it's a long answer, is just it's a really good way to tell a story through food, through art. So that's why I think is a good way to do it, and why a lot of chefs also do it.
Yeah, no, I love that comparison to reading a book because you're absolutely right. So when you opened Conroe, what was your vision for the space? I know that the design also has something to do with, the experience as well, and even the plating and everything like that. So what was your vision when you and your wife decided to open it?
So great question. And we basically, how we do the tasting menu, and how my wife and I, we don't have any other employees. It's literally just her and I.
Oh,
So
really?
a
Wow.
chef's counter is the way to go. There's other ways you can go about it. You can do like one big table, which I've done in the past, but a chef's counter where everybody sits around basically a stage, what I call the chef's pass. It's like an island where I plate and cook everything,
Hmm.
and so it's an experience for the guests as well as for us, because we kind of feed off of their energy. And so that's part of it. So the ambiance, the experience, the build out of the restaurant needed to be comfortable, warm, and cozy, but at the same time, everything's refined. All from the equipment, from the paint, from the Japanese shisugi ban with this cypress burnt wood from Japan, brass handles on everything. So I want to make sure everybody feels like we didn't cut any corners. Everything is just top notch. But then they almost feel like they're coming into our home, and people say that all the time.
Hmm.
And having basically sitting around an island where I and my wife feed them and give them non-alcoholic pairings that I make, or the beautiful wine pairings my wife uh, offers. And so the chef's counter is the key to answer
Right.
that question. That's very important.
So is it almost like an omakase type of experience?
Yeah, so that's a tricky one, because we're definitely omakase in a sense that there is no menu. They don't know what they're going to expect. That, like I said, they just trust in the process. They trust in that they're going to get a 10 to 14 course tasting menu, and they have zero idea. They'll just, if they have any allergies, that sort of thing, I'll always accommodate that. But at the same time, just trust in me, and I'll take care of you, and that's what I do. So, but not omakase in a sense that you're going to expect 20 different little sushi bites or nigiris. It's not to say you won't get one or two of those, because I have a lot of Japanese influence in my food.
Hmm.
However, omakase in a sense of a tasting menu with no menu, and having, because omakase means up to you, leave it to the chef, right? So that's the process that I find really fun, really fulfilling, where you don't know, like back to the book or back to a movie, you don't want to know the whole thing. You want to know about what to expect, but you don't want to know the ending. I don't want to know the whole story, because that ruins the fun, the surprise, the the whole element of going out and having a good time and celebrating life, or whatever milestone you're trying to appreciate in your life.
So do you have some signatures that you bring back, or I mean, do you change the menu often? And explain a little bit about that.
Great. Yeah, that's probably one of the most common questions. How often do you change the menu? The menu is really never the same twice, since there is no menu, and I have all the flexibility in the world to change it as needed based on what I can get and beautiful products. And because some things are, I can get, a farmer will come and say, "Hey, chef, I only have this much, and it's enough for, say, a week or a few days," and then I change it. So that's great. That gives me a lot of flexibility to be creative. But at the same time, there is a few things that are either signatures or techniques that are always on the menu. So I'll start with the name of the restaurant, Konro, which is a Japanese grill. It's like a yakitori hibachi grill,
Hmm.
but it's really about how you use it. And I always grill A5 Wagyu, which is a Japanese beef of the highest quality and grade, and I grill that over Japanese charcoal, Bichitan charcoal, in a tare, which is like a soy sauce that I made about a decade ago. And then you keep adding to it. Think like a mother to a starter.
Oh,
In
wow.
Japan, they have it for generations. Mine's a decade. I'm really proud of it, but not as amazing as in Japan. However, that technique with the A5 Wagyu and how I grill it is always the same. And it literally is the name of the restaurant of that process on grilling it on a conro. And then I have this really, what I think is cool and delicious and fun, this golden egg dish. So these beautiful porcelain golden egg bowls that I got from France that it took about a year to receive and make like this beautiful risotto dish and this 6 hour poached egg and duck fat. And that's been a signature. It's one of people's favorite dish. But yeah, like 2/3 of the menu for sure changes all the time. It's seasonal and it's about what I can get and it's about just being creative. And sometimes it's really we get a lot of past guests and I want to change it up. They might come the following week and so forth, and I want to give them new things. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's really organic.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you have people come back again and again and they are expecting some of the same things maybe because they love them so much, but also some different things?
Well, the funny story is, yes. So one time we had a past guest and he came back. It was probably a week or two later, and he's been here a couple times. And I wanted to change up things. So, like the egg dish, as an example, and I gave him something as good, if it's definitely as good in my opinion. And just like, oh, this is amazing. However, I do miss that egg dish because he loved it so much, and that's sort of how some things become a signature. It's really not up to me, it's really up to the guests, and if they like missed something, not that like the menu is missing anything, but they love it so much that they would love to have it. So that's how some things become a signature on a menu. It's really up to the guest, and we are so fortunate to have so many repeat diners and repeat guests that I can't even tell you how amazing that is and how important that is to us. Almost every single night we'll have at least one person that has
Wow.
dined with us before. So it's really been quite amazing, and we're a lot of times word of mouth where people will just bring like a past guest will like, oh, I gotta bring my mom or my brother or friend, whatever, and they keep doing that, and each of those people will share it with their friends and so forth. And it's always been that kind of process, and we're very proud of that.
So do people come mostly from the West Palm Beach area or do they come from other parts of South Florida or do travelers come there as well?
Yes, to all of it.
All
We
of
get
them,
people from
all of the
all
above.
around the world, and we are also very hyper local. Like we get close. We didn't even know that. Here's an example. So we'll get people from, say, Switzerland, and the next day we got somebody that lives literally across from us on our own street that we didn't know at the time. We got talking. We're like, we are neighbors. So now we're very close with them. So it's a mix of everything, and it's wonderful. Like, how lucky are we to be able to have that big of a reach, as well as being able to being friends, and they also support us being with our neighbors, like
Yeah.
literally, like where we live. That's crazy, and we live not too far from the restaurant. We want to be close, and we just love it here. This is so amazing.
So how far ahead do you have to make a reservation? Is
It's a mix. I would love it if it was a year in advance. That means we're doing so well. But we're doing great. Sometimes we're selling seats right now in end of August through August.
mm,
So there's that. So roughly 6 weeks, and that's kind of normal. Like especially if it's a very special date, like an
right.
anniversary, birthday, or whatever, we suggest that you jump on that and book your reservation, because we only do 10 diners, 10 guests a night. We're very limited in that aspect. So if you have a specific date, please just jump on that. Make
Mhm.
sure you book that right away. And then, and sometimes, depending on the time of year, you can. book it about a week or so in advance.
Hmm.
That's the way it is. So right now it's off season, but we're about as busy as we have been. We opened in October of last year, and
Hmm.
we're as busy as we were in season. It's just a different crowd, more hyper local right now, which is love. It's great. It's amazing.
Hmm.
And then during season, you might get more people, travelers, and more people that have come from other parts of the country. You know, because we have a lot of snowbirds and that sort of thing.
Right. Now tell me about the wine list. I know your wife is the sommelier, and are there certain wines that she favors, or that you do you change that up as well?
Yeah, she'll be the best one to talk to about that. However, I'll say this because I do my best to really listen to her and understand what she does because it's so special. It's that she really favors grower producer winemakers because they have control of the whole process. It's really a lot of like what we do, and it seems to be, just in my opinion, they have a lot more passion behind it. It's not to say
Mhm.
there isn't passion in some other ways to do it, but like you're really growing the grapes from start to finish, and you can pick them and grow them in a certain way to fit exactly how you want your wine to taste. And I really think that shows, at least in my opinion. I'm a sober chef. I'm 6 years sober now, and so I don't really get to taste them, but I do know, like based on what I hear and the guests' feedback. And my wife, she's so smart, so amazing, and how passionate she is to just be a part of this for me, with me, because that's just she'll we do everything together. So I wouldn't be doing this restaurant without her, and she wouldn't be doing it without me. So we are basically one person. So yeah, she loves very passionate wine. So
Mhm.
anything, there's nothing as far as like dollar amount off limits because we want to do as far as everything to the top that we can do, top quality, top producers as possible. So yeah, from Italy, a lot of times it's not. One thing I could say, it's not a lot of say domestic wines because they tend to be very loud sometimes, very like a Napa Cab as an example is really good with an American steak on the grill and that sort of thing. However, it's so strong sometimes it could be overwhelming in a pairing as far as in a tasting menu because you're going to have 6, 7, 8 different like pours, and you don't
Mhm.
want to overdo it. So you have to have, just like food wise, you have to balance it with a nice complexity, is also like with nuances that aren't going to over complicate or overshadow, say, the food or anything else, and vice versa.
Right.
So it could be French wines, Italian wines for sure, but all over, nothing's off limits as long as it's as top quality and it fits in the menu. It's like I said, Pat, it's a whole story. Everything needs to work together. It's very symbiotic in that regard.
Well, tell me a bit about the non-alcoholic pairings because those are really becoming popular at high-end restaurants like yours. And balancing the flavors and the
Right.
textures of the drinks is important.
Well, I'll start again. I'm very proud to be a sober chef and being 6 years sober. So that gives me a different, I think, perspective on what I would consider what I like in a non-alcoholic spirit-free pairing. I make everything in house, and it's very special. And everything's like it almost looks like wine at times because I clarify it to the point
Mm.
where it's like crystal clear and perfect. I'll explain. Like the red wine that I am making right now is for the egg dish. So I know a lot of times she'll do an Italian wine with Nebbiolo grape juice. So I was able to get Nebbiolo grape juice from Italy, and I made a pairing with that with Thai long pepper, which has a lot of like not spice in the sense of heat, but like nutmeg, almond, vanilla kind of notes to it.
Mm.
With and then tannins are really important because especially if you have richer food, you want something that tannins kind of dry out your mouth a little bit. That is
Mhm.
good for fattier, richer foods. And I used raw black walnuts. If you ever have like a walnut and it kind of dries your mouth out, that's tannin. So I use some of that. and I use different things like local mulberries and some dried shiitake mushrooms for earthiness and some other things. But it all comes together and it's so good and it's beautiful. And I clarify all that to the point that I should use something called agar, which is made from seaweed. And it's like a gelling property, and you freeze it, and then you thaw it out over a cheesecloth in the fridge, and that structure creates this like lattice kind of structure, and it naturally filters out the liquid while it's thawing, and it becomes crystal clear. Not like crystal clear like water, but like it'll almost look like wine, but with all the flavor that I added to it. I'll mirror my pairings off of my wife's Nadia's pairing, so that they have the same experience, if you will.
Right.
And it's really, really special. And I'm really proud of that.
So does she taste your pairings to see if they're close?
Absolutely. Yeah, she loves them. And we sell quite a bit of them. I would say about a third, a quarter for sure. I would say 25% people that order and want a pairing, which is most people, will order a non-alcoholic pairing. And it's not just because they don't drink. Sometimes there'll be a couple or whatever, and they'll like share. They'll do one of each,
Oh,
or obviously if they're driving, or just because dry
right.
January or whatever it may be. It doesn't matter, but people love them, and it's another creative outlet for me. But at the same time, it's kind of flip. My wife, she pairs everything for the food, but then I have to pair and make my non-alcoholic pairings to match her pairings. So it's kind of this interesting process.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I never heard of that, before putting so much, you know, complexity into these drinks. I know, I've had a number of them because I've done dry January, and I've also, been a guest at places where they serve them. And they're usually, I mean, some of them are based on tea, some are based on,
Right.
these non-alcoholic spirits that don't always flies too well with the food, but
I don't like those at all.
yeah,
So again, just to clarify, I make everything in house,
yeah,
and it's not just a juice or just a tea or like I don't call it in. It takes a lot of work for me to
sounds it.
make them, and but like I said, I take a lot of pride in it, and I make something that I would love to have in a restaurant as well. And I've had a handful of non-alcoholic pairings too, and at really high-end restaurants around the country. So I want to know how they do theirs, and making sure that we're doing the right thing, and but doing our take on it. And the bottom line is I want people to feel like this is special. The pairing is very thoughtful, and that there's like they're not missing out. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm gonna buy this. It's nice, but no. A lot of times people that are having wine as well, they're like, "What is that? Oh, can I try that?"
Mhm.
So, it's a whole thing, and
Yeah.
it's quite amazing and fun.
Now, when you say only you and your wife run the whole show, do you have a dishwasher?
Me.
Really? So there's no one else in the back of the house except.
No, especially yeah. There's a couple reasons for it. Number one, we want to make sure it's a brand new passion. It's a passion project for sure, and we want to make sure we uh, get the system down and make sure it's exactly how we want it. But at the same time, say during service, um, sometimes you just don't want somebody back there working and kind of making noise, whatever. And
Mm,
that think of maybe like a play or something. You don't want to distract anybody from the show. And quite honestly, only doing 10 people, it's not as bad as it sounds. Obviously, I would love to have all the help and having people running around, but sometimes just having a whole lot of team members running around could be distracting.
mm.
It's not to say we won't change that in the future, but right now it's working great, and eventually, I can't wait to mentor another chef that I can train to help me, and vice versa, someone to help Nadia, my wife. But right now, just generally speaking, it works great on how we're doing it, and it's yeah, we really consider it an experience and a show, and not just having wonderful food and drink.
Well, talking about the future, do you have anything else planned? I mean, it sounds like you have your hands full for sure, but is there anything else that you want to do with your life as a chef?
Great. Well, yeah, the hands are definitely full, and we're focused all of our time making sure we're giving the best experience possible here. But things always work out in the way they do. So we would love potentially to maybe open up another restaurant or who knows what. But like I said, step one is to make sure that Conroe is absolute best restaurant that we can make it. We want to be one of the best restaurants in Florida, South Florida, and maybe the country. I mean, if that's possible, that's our ambition, and we would love to go that way. And like I said, eventually, then start training and mentoring other people that can help us out, move on and grow as people and as restaurateurs. And
Mhm.
another thing that's really important and reason why our hands are so full and we're self-financed. We don't have like any other investors. It's literally
Mm.
50% me and 50% my wife. And we're literally one person, like I said. So that's another thing. That's how we do things. So we're in full control of how we want to run our business, which I think is very important. It's kind of goes back to that grower producer of the wine, where when you're in full control of the process, you don't have other people telling you how to do things to make more money or whatever. We were really focused on the experience first. We really want to make the best possible restaurant that we can, and so that's what we're focused on. So, but one day at a time,
Mhm.
and we're really excited to be a part of the West Palm, South Florida food scene, and we live here all the time, full time. So we're Floridians now, and I thought I would never say that, but I'm proud to say that.